Welcome to the Last American Vagabond. Joining me again for another, I guess, what the hell is happening episode we've been doing lately between Charlie Robinson and myself to discuss what the hell is happening, all the madness that's going on. Been kind of a recurring discussion of ours to just kind of go over the kind of rapid news cycle and the weird evolution of these stories lately, how things seem to be evolving, and our opinions around these, sometimes differing, sometimes the same opinions around these different stories. How are you, Charlie? Always good to talk to you, brother.
R.I.P. Cracker Barrel.
Right into it. Oh my God, the important story of Crackle. It's so funny though that what was it, Crackle Barrel, and then the other one was the Lando Lakes. There's plenty of examples, right, of the shift. Yeah. It's interesting how that's become this, or even stories like that become. I honestly don't know is there more around it? Were they pressured? I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. But it's just like the idea of these evolving kind of shifts. It's a woke left kind of a thing still is what it's attached to, right? Like we're insulted by the Indian lady or the, whatever it is. And what have you seen? What's your take on it? Like, is there more to that?
Well, yeah, I have a sort of a comical skin in the game in the sense that the running joke that we all had with my mom was that she loved Cracker Barrel, and that whenever we saw one, we'd be like, "Oh my God, there's should we pull over? Are we good?" One of those situations. And so when it's in the news, of course, I have to kind of dig in a little bit. And what you find is the usual suspect. They hired some woke left CEO who decided to reimagine the brand without consulting with their demographics and getting everything wrong, from botching the logo to the way they've redesigned the interior. It's part of a kind of a much bigger, it's the personification of a much bigger problem, which is that the elitist left believe that the people in flyover states are just a bunch of low IQ country bumpkins that need to be told what they're supposed to like. And so they come in and go, yeah, you like this place with the tchotchkes all over it and the crap on the walls, but we're going to do away with that because a decision's been made that we're cleaning this up. We're going to go to a modern logo that some 14-year-old kid with a Word document could have created. And we're going to get rid of all the stuff that you love about this place that you've been coming to on the side of freeways for the last, 50 years. We're going to get rid of all of that and reimagine it. And then, and you'll just love it. So it's nothing to be happy. It's being forced on people. Is it a big deal? No, it's not. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. But it's just one of those things that you see that didn't need to be changed, but is being changed because it kind of reminds people of like the old timey Americana stuff, and we can't have that. And it feels like if I were to be like put on my tinfoil hat a little bit, it feels kind of like an agenda to get rid of a lot of Americana type stuff and detach us from any sort of pride or any sort of remembrance about the way it used to be. It's one thing to wait for the boomers to die off, but in the meantime, they're really trying to kill the culture surrounding that as a way of freeing you from the shackles of America. And corporatism, of course.
Well, but so clearly there's an agenda here, and we both agree. I agree with you entirely on the and largely, at least these examples coming from the left very clearly, right? And I want to ask you about even the logo about Crackle Barrel, because I think I'm not sure what the image was. We'll come back to that, but there's clearly an agenda. That's undeniable. But do you genuinely think that not the average people, whether the people online or even just people in Congress who may think that it's about some, battle against right versus left, but from the top, do you really think that that's what it's about just simply, some, surface level kind of like ideological point, or do you think there's more to that behind it? Let's leave it there.
I think that the CEO is an ideological zealot.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's, did they all have a big meeting? Probably not. But does it come from the top? Yeah. If they want to get rid of this stuff and reimagine, listen, the Cracker Barrel logo is an old white guy in like overalls in a rocking chair leaning up against a barrel, right? Like if you replace that with a one-legged transgendered Eskimo, then I guess we tick the boxes, but nobody's going to your restaurant after that.
Yeah, but see, this is my point though.
Like I worked at an ad agency. I understand at a big one too. And I understand like how much time and effort goes into thinking about, like, they come at this from every angle. The fact that the Jaguar ad came out made me think this is an agenda, because in no universe would people look at that and go, oh, this is exactly what we need to do to sell cars.
Right,
It has to be about more than that.
Exactly. And there's clearly more to it, which I think we all can see, but it's like so here's my point. So if there's clearly something more to it, saying that it's just about, or seeing it as just about the woke left point makes it feel like, I mean, how does that, I mean, look, we both agree there are people that are completely absorbed in this. They believe, that everything matters about it, woke pronouns or the world matters more than anything. But I don't believe that's what the real agenda is about. Like, to the point about, like, so it's not like they went to some caricature of whatever you said, a one-legged trans, whatever you said, something like that, which is funny because it makes the point. But instead they went very blank, right? It's like a symbol. So it's like, okay, so it's not the other, it's not the extreme opposite. It's sort of like somewhere in the middle, which I still disagree with. But the other side of it, you've got the Land O'Lakes, like the Indian, Native American woman they removed. It's like same kind of thing. It's like, it's not going, like, it's weird. So one side of it's removing like the black caricature, and this one it's removing the white caricature. So you see what I'm saying? It's like, it doesn't feel like it fits in with the idea that it's left versus right, or their ideology versus the other. It's like kind of what you were hitting at, more about an all-encompassing, I don't even know how you frame it. Like you said, like removing American ideals or like classic, I don't know. But you get what I'm going at. I think there's something bigger than that.
Oh, it could have been much worse. They could have said, we're taking the cracker out of Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, right.
With all you honkies.
But it's almost like that should have been exactly the point. If it was really about, it's like, no, we like the derogatory white word in there.
It could just be a branding oversight. It could be a woke CEO who's out of touch with their demographics. How that's possible, I don't know. I mean, I didn't go to Harvard Business School, and I know you need to figure out what your demographics are before you start a radical overhaul and drop the ball. But when it happens over and over and over again, Bud Light, Jaguar, Target,
Gillette,
you just keep going. Okay, so I understand that there's a BlackRock influence, an ESG component to this, and maybe they're trying to tick some diversity boxes, and that's a very devious way of corporate manipulation, changing culture through corporate pressure from your board of directors who's run by BlackRock.
Really quickly. So here's a point. Like this is exactly what I'm getting at. So as opposed to it being a diversity box, that's the narrative. BlackRock is doing this as a way to control your speech, or use these mechanisms as a way to censor and surveil. And that's kind of what I feel like the real point is. But from left and right, yes, clearly there are the surface level or even the Congress level people that like have absorbed and bought into this. But the real agenda, I don't think they really care about checking diversity boxes or having to use woke pronouns or stopping anti-Semitism, whatever we're talking about, whatever side. I think it's really at its core about much more than that. You know what I mean? And so do you think at the highest level that's what it is, or do you believe that it really is just that they're obsessed with ideological differences,
Well, I think all of this at its core is about control.
Yeah, right.
Controls of speech, control of thoughts, control of narratives, control of ideas, allowing, this is the new version of reality where everybody might be trans. And you're like, I don't want to feel that way. But if you go in and every store is reinforcing this, it feels, it's artificial. It didn't exist before. It doesn't need to exist now. And yet here it is. And you go, why is this happening? This is, and also, especially when you take a look at it from like a business standpoint, because so much of, they spend tons of money making calculations on how do we increase our stock price by a little bit. And then you see some curveball that in no possible way could you ever think this is going to do anything but have a detrimental impact on your stock price? As an example, Target putting tuck pants, and embracing the whole pride thing. How many tuck pants do you think you're going to sell? 100 nationwide? How many people do you think you're going to piss off? 100,000? That's on the low end. You know what I mean? It's a poor calculation, and you start looking at things and you go, God, like, you go and get your MBA and they teach you how to run a business. And I promise you, none of this is happening.
And that's the bigger point, right? So that at the end of the day, we have people like, I think, I don't remember if it was you and I, but I talked about this with somebody that you could explain away political leanings, ideological obsession. But when it comes to like the board, people that shareholders that, in many cases don't even care about the product. That's about, I want my bottom line. I want my return. Yep. And so how you can argue that they were sold on that, or that these people agreed with something that is like objectively counter to their business model, like literally undermine, like Gillette is the point I always make, more than the rest of them, just because it's such a male, demographic. And they went with like the like it was like bad masculinity or something.
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah, it was like, it's just, there's no way that they were like, that's a good business model. So what's the answer? Well, we don't know for sure, but we know things like DEI or the background where it said, okay, look, this is not even about, we're changing the entire model. You don't even need to sell product anymore. We just need you to sell ideas, control, and we will then supplement you. Or rather, what's the word I'm looking for? Not subsidize you, And so that's where I think, and that doesn't even have to be about DEI or whatever it is. It's just about that control mechanism. It's the same way I saw with like USAID, where, at the end of the day, clearly we've seen the narratives and the justifications shift under administration. But, I think they got their foot in the door using certain woke ideas or funding, AIDS treatment, by the way, both of which are still happening on the Trump administration. People just don't want to point to it, so it's all about really the agenda, and so it's like that bigger picture, like what could that possibly be leading towards, in your mind?
Continuity of ideas is what I'm thinking of here, just to keep this ideology going. And I think you're right on the DEI front. It's like, how could you get these corporations to act against their own self-interest when they're so driven by dollars and cents and profit margins and things like this? That's how they're trained. And it has to be an external source. It has to be, we'll make it up on the back end, or you'll be in the club, you'll be in the World Economic Forum club, circle of excellence, or whatever it is. You'll be in the group, you'll be the company store, right? So take a short-term hit now in order to get on our good side. We, BlackRock / World Economic Forum, inseparable at this point now with Larry Fink's promotion. Yep. And you slit you slit your wrists a little bit here, right? Maybe not your throat, but your wrists, and we'll patch you up on the other end, but you'll be in the club, and we'll lock everybody else out, and you'll have no competition. Right. And so, but we need you to show us that you're on board with this. And this is, as you said, it's not about selling razors. It's about selling an ideology. It's about selling the concept that, well, maybe men are, they like to shave, but maybe they're also toxic too. And you go, God, why would you ever do that to your audience? This is your customer base is just completely made up of men and are insulted, and it just immediate. You just shake your head and you go, this will be taught in business school for eons, right? Do not do this, or this, right? And yet you think that people would learn from the Bud Light treatment, and yet here we are.
Yeah, again, which even more so speaks to that it's far more than about the current ideological point they're using, which still is involved. But so like same kind of point, like, so it's clear that it's just absurd. The idea that these things are from a business or an individual, whatever it is, that this is even driving people's actions. And I think we can all acknowledge that the woke left side of it is just the most transparent part. It's just very, very obvious. But people are beginning to recognize, I think have for a long time, but more so today than usual, the same problem from the right side of it. So at least from your perspective, I could give examples, but do you see that kind of thing in the reverse way coming from the right? Like, do you have any examples you could think of?
Yeah, I think that the left is more cartoonish in their belief system, and the right shows classic signs of this as well. Like they make excuses for their guy. They look the other way. They fall into traps all the time. I mean, one of the prime examples, you don't see this on the left at all, but you certainly see it on the right, is the concept of Christian Zionism. Mm-hmm. Like, if ever there was just like a group of people that you go, oh, wait, hang on a second. All of you are under some form of mind control. You need to snap out of it. Like, that stuff you accuse the left of being. This is a version of it. Like, you're in some form of groupthink here. You need to break away, and you can't see that your leaders are cartoon character preachers that are with mega churches, and the whole thing feels very righteous gemstones to me, and and yet you can't get their attention. You feel like they're under a spell. The same way you want to shake the left and go, "What are you doing? Why are you doing all these things that are incompatible with reality?" Like, are you ideological? Are you subverted in some way? Are you captured mentally? Or is this what Yuri Bezmenov talked about? I mean, have you been broken to a point where you can't be fixed?
Some of all of it.
Yeah, but the right has their own flavor of it, and it's hero worship, in embarrassing fashion. It's authoritarian worship. Yeah, get John Bolton, go kick his door in at 6 a.m. Listen, I despise John Bolton. But the idea of the state using this, here we go. It's like, you've got to be ideologically consistent here. If you're against it when it's done to Roger Stone, not because you love Roger Stone, but you think he's gross too, but just because it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
You don't get to then enthusiastically cheerlead when it happens to John Bolton just because he's the war walrus and you think that he deserves it. Yeah, I think he deserves something like that too, but I don't want the state to be the ones doing it. I want it to be his next door neighbors.
Yeah. Well, and I would argue more so like maybe less ideological as just principle. You know what I mean? Like
principle.
Logical is like, the side versus the side. But I agree. It's like, if you care about the idea of it, it shouldn't matter who it's being done to. It should be wrong in principle, and it's like, that's what's so frustrating. But, even bigger than that too, though, the idea, it's the same kind of model, whether it's about anti-Semitism or even just the overlap, which we can get into around, like you said, the good, just broad church authoritarianism, but like worship, it's weird. Like this overlap, whether it's DC, the constitutional discussions, and so it's like they have these, mechanisms through which they see that it's easier to make the things they want to move. And I think it happens on both sides of the paradigm for a joint goal ultimately, and so let's actually, one more thing before I wanted to talk about some partisan stuff that I thought was interesting. You mentioned BlackRock. I want your thoughts on this. It's really interesting. So now that the head of the WEF, right, which is not surprising, but what is very weird to me is how completely immersed BlackRock is with the Trump administration, just like the last time, by the way, with the COVID-19 overlap, as well as like even like a Bill Gates character who's also very much overlapped with Fink in many ways, and how Palantir is overlapped with all. That's a different point. The point is just BlackRock and the obvious concern that mostly conservatives have around that, but how it doesn't seem to matter when it is like, the WEF Trump overlap. Like, how does that not just spin this whole thing out? It's very weird how clear that is. What do you think about that? And kind of choosing to ignore it.
Yeah, I just recorded an episode for Macroaggressions that'll go out next week about the dark heart of the financial system, which is BlackRock. And when you dig into what they really own, I mean, people say like, oh, they own everything, and you go, yeah. But to be 0.01% of their portfolio means that they've got at least $1.5 billion invested in your company.
That's insane.
It is staggering, the amount of money that they have. They have $12.5 trillion of assets under management as of this quarter. So and growing at rates that are staggering. They were $9 trillion in 2023, just to put it in perspective. So we're talking about a 33% growth in just 2 years when you're already at $9 trillion under management, and you're growing at startup rates.
That's so insane. It just becomes so meaningless. The idea of that money, like, have you ever seen one of those videos that do like the visualization of money?
Yes.
Like, once you get past like so many million, like your brain can't even really, it just becomes like this, it blends together. Oh, you built trillions, it's like, you can't even really understand it. That's why it's called a shadow bank. That's what's so weird about it, is that it's literally called a shadow bank. It's basically the U.S. government finances at this point. It's just so wild. But so it's very alarming to me. We can, be talking about the Great Reset. We can watch how all of this is just completely fully arced back to where they're running out the Great Reset. And maybe with like a barely different PR campaign. It's just a little bit different slant. And now Fink is head of the WEF and now pushing out more and more about the same future. And now he's, it's just, I think I'm shocked to see how few people have made those dots connect. I'm actually really feeling good about how many people are choosing to call out the Epstein cover up, call out a lot of this stuff. But that one to me is just like, that needs to happen. Like, we need to recognize that this is in full blow. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think the Great Reset is being completely executed right now, or is there something different happening?
Well, when you've got Build Back Better and you rebrand it with a big, beautiful bill,
right?
It feels like you're using the same ad agency to
It's funny
deliver
that,
the message.
yeah, it's hard not to see that.
So I mean, when you know that both of these red team, blue teams are the same team, when you understand that, then it all makes way more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that, like, well, here comes the red team. Well, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to do something kind of similar, but it's going to have red team terminology. It's going to have their ad. It's going to have all their stars in it. Like, it's going to be geared more towards them because they're the winners. So this time we're still doing the same stuff. It's just a different flavor. It's Coke or Pepsi. And so the tyranny, in fact, if you want to sell the tyranny that the people on the red team would rightly call out, then you're going to need your guy to do it, because you can't have the opposite guy try to sell it just doesn't work that way. You've got to have your guy. So what the Trumpers didn't realize was that when he won, then what that meant was that they were going to get a whole bunch of things coming their way that were going to be against their own self-interest, but they were going to be made to support it. Because their guy was there. So if the Democrats, all broke down and cried, when Trump got in again, but if they understood the plan, what they would see is that for the next 4 years, they're actually going to get probably a little bit of a break while he targets the conservatives and removes their rights and does the things that had Obama done it, he would have been caught. How Joe Biden or whoever that was done it, or Kamala, there would have been, they would have been locked and loaded, ready to go. But because it's their guy, they all put their guard down. They allow that Trojan horse to be brought inside the gates, and then they get the World Economic Forum in the form of Larry Fink. Well, you were going to get the World Economic Forum either way. Right. Didn't really matter. You just got it this time, but now he's Trump's guy because of, I don't know, Lutnick or something. I don't know.
Yeah. many different overlapping points, but yeah, I guess more what I'm asking is, do you think that the Great Reset as it was laid out is actually still happening, or do you think they've deviated from the bigger plan? Because that happens. We've seen it. We've seen them shift entirely to something new, at least momentarily. So do you think that's still what's happening, or are they going to shift?
Well, define the Great Reset then. Exactly, because
I mean, I guess the campaign that was laid out, right? Like all the different the points of the Great Reset laid out by Klaus Schwab. The Fourth Industrial Revolution, all of that kind of stuff. Like, do you think that's like in earnest still marching forward, or are we, or is it maybe that was the head fake itself? What do you think?
Well, I think in Europe, they're for sure getting the World Economic Forum treatment. I think that with Trump, he's probably less enthusiastic about it, but I don't think that he has a say ultimately in this. I think that when you're talking about this globalist group, it's settled in boardrooms more so than in Washington D.C. Once they've incorporated the major corporations of the world with the interlocking boards of directors, and then you bring the granddaddy of them all, BlackRock, in and have their head guy sit down and drive policy. My guess is that it will continue, but it just might look a little bit differently. It might not be, the overt bad guy, Klaus Schwab with the German accent and the spacesuits that he wears, but it could be more like it's definitely going to be as bad, probably even worse with Larry Fink, but it'll be handled in, through these interlocking boards of directors where all the major decisions are made. And whether Trump wants it or doesn't want it, I think this is above his pay grade.
Yeah, that's a good point too, is it kind of does now slant the flavor towards more of the what we're seeing a lot of, actually. There's like the CEO run country, the
Yeah.
CEO run liberty, freedom city that's actually a technocratic nightmare. It's like, so maybe that's the new push. We're selling it to you as the CEO run version that'll be business wise. It's like, it's interesting, even though that's clearly not even what's happening. More spending, bigger government, it's frustrating. But yeah, I personally, I think it's very much still happening. Like the very plan, but just slightly different framing. But I guess we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
But you mentioned John Bolton. So I think this is interesting. Just a couple overlaps on this. Rating the home of John Bolton, which is just on its face interesting, because I think it's funny to see how the what's the word they use? Just the friends of the past become the enemies of today. It's like constantly oscillates like that, where he was the team player, him and Bill Barr were going to save the world, and suddenly now they're the monsters. But like you already addressed this, and I agree. I think it's wildly inconsistent, and just the idea of the authoritarianism itself, like what's happening here. I haven't gone into this in depth. What's the argument? Do you know of why they?
I don't know.
I haven't looked.
I mean,
skim right now, but I haven't got a chance to look at it.
I mean, if we're talking about like what crimes could John Bolton be arrested on, I would imagine there's a variety of them. But in terms of what they're looking at right now, why today as opposed to last week or 3 weeks from now, I don't know.
I did read this earlier. If they're claiming, or they are part of a larger search for classified records, doesn't that become like the catch-all these days? Classified records, and then no one ever gets in trouble for anything. But see, here's where it gets interesting. The narrative becomes that it's more than that, even though there's nothing to go on. And that's what I find interesting. Excuse me. Alex Jones says DOJ sources, which, his quote unquote DOJ sources have been wrong more often than not, say more raids are coming ahead of dozens of indictments. So, I don't, this feels a lot more like we keep the whole Q thing. But I mean, I think we both agree, to your point actually before, there's so many crimes you could arrest these people for, but then you open the box for all of them. Trump was in there when he was doing these things. I mean, they're all war criminals, so I doubt that's what it's going to be about. I don't think John Bolton or anybody is going to be held accountable. It says FBI raids Maryland home of John Bolton. Of course, Patel says no one is above the law. You got to love these fake statements that like you said here. Barnum statement: public corruption will not be tolerated. In fact, public corruption will always be tolerated inside the American empire. It's part of the glue that keeps the whole thing together. That's Dan Bongino for the podcast.
Yeah.
Funny. Go ahead and comment if you want to. I can't see your face right now, so jump in if you want to. I was going to read some of these. You have a comment?
No, I just think that it's such a laughable statement when the FBI is out there talking about how nobody's above the law. Like, what have you been watching for the last, 25 years?
Yeah.
There's clearly a segment of society that is above the law.
And even more so clearly right now in this administration. I mean, they've shown us that with Epstein, with Maxwell, or anybody else, or Gates, or, any of the people that are supposed to be trotted in front of us in handcuffs,
Yeah.
And then there's a couple more of these that just, this one is, so, saying that, Patel is telling us no one's above the law. Over here, though, and this was the day before, Trump administration was preparing to fire Patel and replace him with Andrew Bailey. There's a whole conversation there if you want to get into it, but it's interesting. Like, it's the way that this reporting has been going from a lot of them is very interesting. Kind of like, I don't know, just it's weird the way they recovered. This one says whistleblower reveals how Patel and Bongino are actually being thwarted by the deep state, right? So it's like, this is my point of how his coverage, you're covering all your bases. You throw out every possible thing, and then whichever way it goes, we knew it, we were right. I just find it very interesting. But the idea that somehow President Trump's kryptonite has always been a corrupt DOJ, what a stupid thing to say. Yeah, because I don't know. What do you think before I jump in with my thoughts?
It's just theater, it's like, and cue the the actors to the stage, and then exit stage left. It just feels like trust the plan. Arrests are coming. Deep state is in trouble. It'll all be exposed, all this stuff. I mean, is John Bolton being led away in handcuffs? Raiding his house? This could be theater for all we know. I mean, maybe just they're trying to rattle his cage. But is John Bolton going to go to prison? No. If he was going to go to prison, he would have gone to prison for, I don't know, being involved in war crimes, for facilitating the sale of chemical weapons to Iran or Iraq or some foreign leader. You remember the video of him like walking down the street in the United Arab Emirates? Some people filmed him. They're like, this is John Bolton walking down the street. He's like walking down the street, or he was in like Doha someplace, and you're like, what's going on here? He's a scumbag arms salesman and has been for a long, long time. Bloodthirsty Zionist who never saw a war he didn't want your kids to go die in. So there's plenty of reasons to want to hate John Bolton or to think that he should be locked up. But what this is all about in the end is it's like Trump porn for the right, where they go, he's rounding them up. He's just going one by one. I mean, at this rate, there'll be dozens of people by the next in 4 years out of the thousands or tens of thousands who should be led away in handcuffs. I mean, it just feels like more theater to fill the news cycle. And then, football's coming up. It starts in 2 weeks. So it'll be out of the, we won't be talking about it.
Right. Well, I mean, clearly your point is this is the same thing I've said in the past about others, right? Or Obama or anybody. The idea is, okay, so you're telling us, you're going out, you've raided his home. So you've got something, right? So why isn't he being arrested and led away? The idea that, so you're on a fishing expedition then. You're going there to look for something. So that clearly does not mean what they're trying to lay it out as. They're framing it as it's all coming down. Well, then they would be arresting these people, not diving into their home and making a big show like you're talking about. It's insulting to our intelligence at the end of the day. And the idea of the Trump porn thing is it's clear that they want that momentum. They want you to feel like to distract from many, many different things. I mean, isn't it weird how the Epstein story, it's every day we get further from that story. Every single day, I don't even see momentum anymore. They keep acting like, well, the courts, they said no. And there's so many other angles through which they could put information out, and they are just letting it drift away. It's very obvious. Dave Smith even just called him out in some recent thing. He was on stage saying, they covered this up, or even what's the other ones that I was just talking about? Like, or whether it's the Maha complete dismantling of this administration, but all these different moves where they just keeps getting further away. Do you think there's going to be any accountability for any of that? For any of the different, larger points?
No, I mean, and they, if there was a little bit of accountability, it would go a long way.
That's why John does get arrested.
They haven't made that connection. Like, you've got to show some of the people going to jail if you really want to get away. But they don't care, much in the same way they don't care about the Epstein stuff. He just left them, he hung them out to dry. Cash and Bongino just says, we're not releasing it. You guys go out there and fall on your swords, look like idiots. I don't care. We're not going to, I just know that I'm going to take it for a while and then we'll move off of the news cycle. And I've been around long enough to know that eventually, summer will be over. We'll be talking about something else and we'll forget about it. And you guys get to bear the brunt of it. You guys, anybody who's loyal to Donald Trump, why? This is like being loyal to the psychotic king. At some point he's going to turn on you. He turns on everybody. And to think that this time you're going to tame him, or you're going to be different, or you're going to get to the bottom of it, or what? Like, it's not happening. There's no loyalty with this guy at all. And so the cash, the Bonginos and the Bondies of the world, he views them as disposable. The way he's seen people, contractors, through his business world, I'm sure executives with NBC probably saw them as disposable. He doesn't value people. So if you want to work with this guy, just, don't act surprised when things go awry. I mean, I don't know why these guys are acting like they didn't see it coming. Like, we all saw it coming. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I'm of the mind that more and more people who haven't in the past are, but I wonder here too, like, it's certainly like, because of what you said and how long this has been, the can has been kicked down the road, if you will. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody like a John Bolton does. I mean, again, I don't think it's going to happen based on past events, precedents, and just the reality of the facts. I'm arguing, I think it's unlikely. But if it did, it would make sense because they know that people need that, some kind of a bone. Like, look, we are doing it. Everybody hates John Bolton.
Everybody. Yeah, you could do that to universal approval.
Seriously, but John Bolton does know where the bodies are buried, and so like you wonder how this ultimately plays out. But I simply said, who's got the odds on whether this is yet another hype false story in a long line of hype false stories that leads nowhere but the sale of penis bills on InfoWars. As we all should. I certainly hope these criminals are arrested, but history suggests that we're being played.
John Bolton will never go into a prison cell. if John Bolton is ever going to be taken off the chessboard, it will be that two men enter his room, hold him down, inject him with a substance, slip out the back door, and John Bolton has a heart attack in the middle of the night. Okay? Because they're not going to leave a guy who knows where the bodies are buried, as you rightly pointed out, to sit around and get himself in a pickle and then have to start talking. That just and John Bolton would know that.
Exactly. That's a great point, which means he's going to act accordingly, or logically speaking, that's what you would assume, but an overlapping point is the Maxwell point, which I didn't have necessarily set up to talk about, but the interesting discussion I recently saw, I don't know if you saw this, where now the statements coming out, whether being released by people supporting of her or the prisoner herself, I didn't really see, I haven't got into it in depth, but that she's in danger now, right? Which interestingly makes sense, right? You're clearly, with the whole overlap to all of this, you've been moved to a lower security prison, and everyone just kind of stops talking about it. It's like, was that set up that way so she could be taken out? It's worth considering, right? But it's interesting to think about that now you have this situation where she is, in limbo. It could work out in her favor if ultimately this, I don't know. I mean, how do you see this playing out with her in that position? It seems they're drifting further and further away from any accountability. The courts have stepped in and said at least twice now that the records can't come out, even though they could do it if they wanted to. Where do you see that going?
I mean, I think we talked about this a couple of months ago. What if they made her into a victim?
That's already happening in some places. Yeah. Newsmax, for example.
And you could see her. Well, I mean, I guess you could go one of two ways with this. You could either see this as they're moving her into position for her to be easier to be taken out, which a case could be made for that. But I think people who know the prison system will tell you, if you want to get somebody, you can get them. And if you want to get somebody as high profile as her, you're going to have connections to do that. And of course, the people who would want Ghislaine Maxwell dead would have those connections. So I think that she's always been in danger, but she's also hasn't been talking in the past. And so the more that the FBI visits her in jail, I mean, that obviously puts a target on your back, because it implies that you're in some way communicating with them and nobody can be sure what you're saying. So that would automatically put a target on her back, as if she didn't have one already. But maybe it kind of died down and, they made a calculation. But if you want to come at this from the other direction, is that she could be one step closer to getting out for talking to these people about what she knows, about who was involved. She could be being pressured in some way to come out and say, all these people over here were involved, but Trump wasn't.
Right.
Obviously, that would, if she did that, if that was part of of some sort of stipulation, the left would never believe it anyway. So I don't know who you'd be convincing. You might be able to settle the minds of some of the people on the right, but they're already convinced that he's innocent of everything and he's fine. So
I don't know, though. I see a split down the middle, though. I mean, I see a lot of really prominent people on the right who are, in many ways, even still supporting him, which I continue to find confounding, like with the COVID shot thing. But they go, yes, bad, but he did cover up the Epstein network. It's
nice. It's a crack.
Yeah.
I like that, right? I do like that they're starting to break away and say, well, I supported him, but I don't support this. Okay, good. That's a great first step. It doesn't mean you don't have to sign on to everything. You can like one of these candidates, but you don't have to sign on to everything that they do. You can say, I like them, but I don't like what he's doing right now. Right. That's the first step towards recognizing that they're all criminals. But if you can at least see the flaws in your guy, or you can say, I draw the line here, like this is wrong, or we voted for him, or I was kind of on the fence and I didn't really care one way or the other, but I leaned towards him because it would be nice to have some resolution to the Epstein stuff, and a lot of these people need to be in prison. So he said he would do that. So if there's a chance that he'll do it, I'll vote for him. And then he gets in there and goes, yeah, we're not doing it. You go, God damn it.
Yeah.
I fell for it again. One of those, like, for those people. Yeah. I think those people are genuinely starting to be, to feel like they've been had. And but if Ghislaine came out and just said, oh, Trump wasn't involved at all, I mean, how much? I don't know. Would that do anything for the damage control of those people who are frustrated with him if he came out and Or would that be good enough? Or would they say, still doesn't change the fact that this was done to somebody's kid? You might not have been the person doing it, but somebody was. And for you to not investigate this, or to call us all stupid for still talking about it is not only insulting to my intelligence, but it's immoral, or it goes against my sense of morality or something. So I don't know what she's going to be used for in this whole play, but she's got cards to play, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
She's in prison, which is not a good spot, but she knows a lot, and that information is valuable to a lot of people.
And I think at this point, with where they've bungled this thing so far, I think that the best case scenario for the Trump administration, or just Trump's personal perspective, would be to go that route, to have her come out, folded in over the next week or 2 weeks, as some kind of new stories come out that she's the victim, right? That somehow that it was all abuse and that she was played, and it finally comes out through the court. And if you using that, and then her saying Trump was innocent, they were trying, it's a Democrat attack. Like, I could see far too many, and even people that are maybe calling stuff out but want to believe in Trump, falling for that. Because it's an easy, low-hanging fruit to be like, I knew it. He wasn't bad. It was always the Democrats, and it puts back to, that's what I think the best case scenario is, but that would be difficult to manage, I think. But we'll have to see how it plays out. Yeah. It's interesting, though. Yeah. So let's talk about this last point on the partisan thing. I think is interesting. This has been going around in regard to an interview that Tucker Carlson had. And what's the guy's name again? It was
Dave Collin.
Thank you. Yeah, and this everyone. Laura all dogpiling. Look, and I'm very, very, very suspicious of Tucker Carlson, and I think there's a lot of very obvious reason to be, but he has been calling things out, even though there's things that have been public knowledge for a long time that have been getting a lot of attention to them, right, around Israel and so on, which is positive, but we should continue questioning all of them. I hope that's importantly heard, but it's funny to see the loomers of the types kind of like dogpiling onto him about anything they can, which says a lot to me. This one was about him saying, I think the statement was, one can make the argument that we should have sided with Hitler. Now, I've seen his work. The idea to claim that he's advocating for Hitler support is absurd. If you look at the rational arguments that are being made, as I understand it, I watched the general part of it, is that ultimately the argument is, that based on this information, should this be true, you could argue that was the side that, was, fighting the evil, but, whatever. Not to say that he goes, I think we should support Hitler. It's a very nuanced argument to make. And let's just even say he was making that statement. My point is around all of it is how insane it is for somebody to say Tucker is now bad for letting this person express their opinion. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that the woke left? Right? Isn't that what that was about? The same thing. And now here's the right doing the same thing, which is always the point to make around this, but just the way that it's like this language control point. And I mean, in no way, to be clear, am I arguing that there's somehow an argument made that we should support? I don't think that's the reality. I think he was a monster, like a lot of people that worked in many ways overlap with the very powers we're fighting today, by the way, both US and others we could talk about. But what are your thoughts about this and how it's being applied? And like, especially with the overlap of Zionism and where this all is, it's an interesting thing. The split right here, Loomer, Tucker, what do you think about it all?
They did the same thing with Daryl Cooper when he came on and talked about Churchill, right? And he was like, well, Churchill wasn't all that great. And people like, what are you talking about? How dare you? He had a cigar and he, and you go, well, there's more. It goes to an underlying point that there are more questions about World War II now than there have ever been. And people are starting to re-examine history and look back on this and go, all right, well, given what I know now about the way the media operates and how dirty politicians are in our modern world, isn't it reasonable for me to think that maybe what we in the West are told about World War II is skewed to benefit us and make us look better, make somebody, history is written by the victors, as they say. I had a conversation with a handyman who is Russian and who works with me on things. And I asked him, he couldn't come one day because he was at a celebration with his family. And it was a World War II celebration. He said, it's a big deal to us, to Russians. And in my community here in Denver, he says, he says, do you know about World War II? I said, well, I know. I mean, I had to unlearn what I thought I knew and learn the new version of it. And what I know is that you guys lost a lot of young boys. You lost a lot of people during that war, and that the bulk of the heavy lifting was done by the Soviet Union against the Germans, and that America's involvement was greatly exaggerated. He just looked at me like, okay, yeah, I mean, so you know a little bit more about it. And so it depends on it depends on where you grew up and what you're taught. Because here in the United States, I mean, America saved the day in World War II. You know, we dropped the bombs on those dirty Japs, you know, and we came in and we defeated the bad guys. And you go, okay, well, what if they're all bad guys?
Right.
You know, like, have we considered that? Like, there's this idea that it's like, these are the good guys and those are the bad guys. It's like, well, okay, but the reason why it all started in the first place was because of all these other things that nobody talks about. Doesn't that make the good guys kind of the bad guys too? It's like, well, okay. So when Dave Collum or Daryl Cooper or somebody is saying, goes and says something like this that creates a firestorm, what they're really saying is World War II is a lot more complex than we have been told.
Right.
There's the stories of what led to it, what happened during it, and then the things that were done in the aftermath of it. There are a ton of lies surrounding those stories, and it is worth a reexamination. Now, it talks, it's just kind of harkens back to the General Patton quote about, I think maybe we fought on the wrong side here. And you go, why would he say that? You know, what did he see? Did he see something that we didn't see? Is it, they're all banker wars. Was Hitler a gay British spy, as Sam Tripoli says? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, what's really going on? Because to examine a comment like that, just on its face, even if he said, even if he went to the most extreme, requires you to unpack a whole new version of history that you probably didn't know. And you're not going to ever get to a point where you're saying Hitler was a good guy, right? You're not going to get there. Right. But you're going to get to a point you're going to go, well, now I understand. If I was in Germany in 1937, I would have given the middle finger to the Nazis and I would have never joined up anything. And you go, yeah, you lived through COVID, didn't you? Mm-hmm. You saw what happened to people during COVID, right? I don't know if do you know the conditions inside Germany that led to a lot of this frustration? What was happening? Who was doing it? What was being done? Like, there's a whole lot to unpack here. So I think that when you're in a headline-driven society, social media fueled, sound bites, clips, 2-minute thing. I got 2 minutes of Tucker out of 3 hours or whatever, and you use that. You can paint whatever picture you want. You can make Dave Collum look like a rabid Nazi if you'd like to, or you can make him look as like an intellectual, who he is. He worked as a professor at Princeton, and you can say that what he's saying is that we have to examine all the information, not just some cherry-picked information that goes into your textbooks that's controlled by some guys that you don't even know. So I think that whenever you get something like this, it's probably good for ratings, good for clicks, probably gets a lot of people watching that interview. But if you're looking to drag some guy out in his jack boots out of an interview with Tucker, this isn't it.
Well, on top of that, it's largely directed towards Tucker. How dare he sit there and let this man express his opinion? Yeah. And after everything that Charlie just said and what we just looked at, now listen to the statement again. The argument could be made that this was it's to put out the idea that you're not framing an alternative argument in any context is somehow wrong. It's weird how that is only really ever happening in conversations like this and certain points and certain historical, this is not allowed. You are not allowed to look at Zionism. It's very weird how all that happens, but I think it just speaks to the control of a lot of important things, like your point about World War II entirely. There's major aspects that people don't look into, they don't want to understand. And even the idea of the most contentious parts by design, the Holocaust, the different aspects of the way that went down, the idea that we're not allowed to have a conversation about nuances or how somebody, even from the perspective of maybe they just got the data wrong, it's like, how dare you, it's like whatever it is. And it's just so insane. That speaks volumes. And I think today people are finally, more than ever recognizing that. That's not to say that we're trying to make the argument that this is good or that's bad. It's just an analytical point. It's just like you're saying, he's an intellectual making an argument about the historical misinformation. And that's what it all spins out into. It just shows you the control that we are under in the world. And it's not just Israel. There's a lot of other parts around this, but thank you. That's an insightful breakdown on that. It's very, very weird though. It's coming from Ted Cruz, and like watching this kind of split down the middle of these parties. It's fascinating to watch.
You're not allowed to make the argument that there could be questions about World War II, but you are allowed to make the argument that men can have babies.
Yeah, right. Or going the direction based off your COVID point, right? That we don't need a COVID-19. We're watching a genocide play out, and people are citing, the same kind of idea. But to your point, that it's about a bastardization of the information. Using the misinformation to drive us into places of control, as always, every possible thing. But then always within that, there are multifaceted agendas, individual congressmen, let's say, that have their own agenda about the way they want something to go down, or people in the military or different governments. There's always, that's why it's so difficult to put a pin in one thing. This is what it was about. There's always so many things happening. Let's take this into, well, I was either going to talk about ICE DC overlap, or let's see how much time we have. Let's talk about this first, and then we'll go into some DC stuff and ICE with how much time we have left. So I thought this was interesting. So you might have seen this. This just kind of speaks to the larger agenda. Elon Musk on how to avoid being replaced by AI. I'll just play the beginning of it.
Vision for a society where human effort is no longer required for survival or productivity. How do we avoid irrelevance?
Right, I think that's the central question. Well, if we are symbiotic with AI, where there's this essentially a merger of human and machine intelligence, then we may be able to address the relevance question.
So he goes on to clearly continue to point out that we should merge with machines. It does sound familiar. I'm sure we've heard this before.
What the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
Now, to us, this is not new, right? We've seen Elon Musk make very similar points before. We've seen this building well before Klaus Schwab, but kind of the same or earlier point. And I'd like to even get into some Elon weirdness and Doge and stuff like that, but he's clearly pointing to the direction this is all going in. And this is not like 20 years from now. This is happening. This is the weird part for me as somebody covering this. We're literally watching this happen. Right? We can see them building infrastructure, building out. I mean, we have bots running parts of our government at this point, if not entirely, for all we know. And he's outlining this merger for the future. I just want your thoughts on that, where that goes, the overlap with the China perspective. It's alarming.
Well, I think it's important for people to get clear on what the fourth industrial revolution actually is. He talks about the blending of man with machine into something known as transhumanism. Mm-hmm. And that word matters. The reason why they did not robot future or whatever, no, it's transhumanism. And that word was coined in 1957 by Sir Julian Huxley, the head of the British Eugenics Society, when he rebranded eugenics into something else, into a different word, because it had a lot of baggage. And the word he chose was transhumanism. And it sounds futuristic and kind of cool. And if you go with the sales pitch from Schwab, which will now be Larry Fink, that this is an upgrade to your physical body. It's robot arms, it's implantable devices, it's pills that you swallow that map and make sure that everything is working. It's benefit. That's if you sell the benefits. This is a timeshare sales pitch. And they're only going to show you the glossy images, right? They're not going to talk to you about what it really is about. What it really is about is depopulation, because that is transhumanism, is eugenics, and eugenics is depopulation. So, but you can't just come right out and say that, because people won't walk into, they won't walk into the cage if you say it's about that. So it's got to be about something more and something that they can sell. And who better to sell it than Elon Musk? He's got Neuralink. He's a trusted guy with your car. You get your satellite internet from him sometimes if you're out and about. He's relevant. And so So he's the guy who's selling the future, and the future, unfortunately, that these guys want to push is what he's not going to say when asked the question about relevance in a world of AI, is that the truth is you're irrelevant to them. Mm-hmm. And that actually, as part of the fourth industrial revolution, it's the blending of man with machine, but it's then the subsequent removal of man because they're no longer needed for these tasks. So it's just that most people will never dig beneath the surface. I mean, maybe what is necessary to wake people up to this, I mean, you would think a cartoon character like Klaus Schwab and his whole getup would be the thing that wakes people up. Maybe they just need to see known bad guy Larry Fink in charge there, and they go, wait a second, like, he's not Uncle Klaus, he's Larry the evil banker. Why is he in charge of this? Like, wait, he wants me to implant devices? The scary banker, billionaire guy who's owns all these, like, what if it has the exact opposite effect?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. You just wonder if kind of the point made before is that maybe they've created a situation, a climate where people are more amenable, open to driving towards a CEO run anything. Trump the businessman. This is the same model. I just hope that we're not that simple. I'll include this too. This is to make that point. I've covered this many times. James Corbett did a great breakdown of this. This is the one from that basically Klaus Schwab and the rest in the U.S. government overlap are pointing to converging technologies for improving human performance. 2002. This is the one that Corbett covered from Canada, exploring biodigital convergence, that it literally says biological and digital systems are converging and could change the way we work, live, and even evolve as a species, which I think is important, seeing as how in this report from 2002, it overlaps. This is how I covered it on the show. The government docs from 2002 reveal a 20-year plan to alter evolution with nanotechnology. It puts us right at 2022, right in the middle of the COVID-19 overlap, So it's like, I think that there's a very clear effort that overlaps with this. That's like a whole, not just like evolving technology, digital IDs and surveillance, but like something internal, and that's why I think that there's a whole part of this that is being done without our knowledge. And I think that's the COVID-19 overlap, different point entirely, but I think that these obviously connect, and I think a lot of these stories are about trying to get us to look anywhere other than what's literally in front of us, sadly enough.
Yeah, well, they're not going to tell the sheep they're headed to the slaughterhouse. They just can't do that, and so they're gonna. It will constantly be disguised and hidden or sold to us as a benefit. And but for those of us that are suspicious about these sorts of things, I mean, and I think we're right to be. The sales pitch is going to look a bit cartoonish, so I always kind of keep that in mind when I see things like this. When I see this Elon, the sales guy, and I always wonder, like, well, maybe this messaging isn't for me. When it's obvious to me that it's crazy and diabolical, and I look at it and I go, well, maybe everybody else isn't seeing it the way I'm seeing it. Maybe maybe the way they see it is some other way. I need to read that 2002 document.
Like I said, I'm sure you've seen it before too. It's the premise for a lot of this. The whole because what it's talking about is the merging of the nanotech, biotech, information, and cognitive. So it even talks about like the neuroscience overlap. And this is what's crazy is how long ago this has been mapped out. And this involves the United States. I'll definitely send it to you. And James Corbett did a really good breakdown of this one and the whole bigger picture, which I think I'll send that to you. I think I have it saved as well. It just kind of shows you where this has been mapped out, and what's weird is that half that conversation, even today, is considered to be conspiracy theory. And here they are in 2022, like mapping out how these things will converge. And then of course, when Klaus Schwab steps out and goes, this is when it's happening, it kind of all clicks together for people that have been watching this build. It's very, very strange. Well, on a final point around this, what do you think some of these next steps will be? Right now, it feels like a lot of the coverage, the media, we're being pulled, and I mean, in obvious, accurate ways, like the genocide is very important to highlight and see and cover. But it's an ongoing kinetic war. My point is that we seem to be focusing on things that are in front of us that we can cover, as opposed to some of these deeper points, like the Great Reset, like transhumanism, technocracy, political machinations, so like, what do you think some of these next larger steps will be that pull us into that direction?
Boy,
that great reset.
I've been writing recently a lot about eugenics on a new book, and it's just a reminder to me that these people, when you get these very powerful people in large groups, they have these. There's two overriding themes. The one is we should all be in charge, and if we were to work together and form some sort of world governance structure, we could run the world. And secondly, this whole thing would work a lot better if it wasn't for all these people. Mm-hmm. And as we start to, as you mentioned earlier, that the acceleration, it feels like we're at the point now where they're going to start the culling process. I mean, the vaccines over the last couple of years, whether they were meant to do it on within hours, as some people suffered, or whether it was more of like a 10-year time bomb set on the immune system. It feels like if you're going to push everybody into Agenda 2030, and that's been on their calendar, not my calendar, but their calendar for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. If we're getting to the final stretch here in the last 5 years of this, and if you're going to make it happen, it's gonna be done through these digital means. It feels like that's the calculation that's been made. So my eyes are always on the technocracy side of things. Yeah. I talk a lot about the CBDCs and the money and all of that, but watching that, whether it's the space fence being built or whether it's just the push of AI or the dependency already a lot of people have on AI, which is crazy. But that's where I'm keeping my eyes on for the from here on out. I'm watching the because the reason why I feel that way is because on day 2 of Trump's administration, he walked out some of the most dangerous technocrats on the planet. Yep. And so I think it pays to watch that. Now, there's a lot of things going on. It's not to say don't worry about what's going on overseas, and because I do, but if I have to prioritize what's likely to impact my life, the truth is what's going on in Israel doesn't really factor. But the technocracy, the digital side of things impacts all of us. And so if they can get that locked down, then we're in real trouble. So I think that's where my focus has been. Mm-hmm. I think that it's a reasonable place to put your focus when you see the likes of Sam Altman and Larry Ellison and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Alex Karp and of course the role of JD Vance, and you wonder, why is that guy there?
Yep.
We know he's one of them. They created him and he's been installed. He's got an unusual rise to power, and it looks like he'll be the next one. And so what do these guys have going on with him? So if we're looking for something like, what are we working on in the future? Well, I'm working on in the future is watching JD Vance. Mm-hmm. to see what sort of Trojan horse he's going to become.
Yeah,
because it feels like he may be, Trump can only far because he's polarizing, but maybe Vance can sweet talk people.
Well, there we go. I lost you for a second there. Yeah, but I agree. I think that Vance is a very alarming character. He very much, it has a very, I was going to say has a very kind of Obama-esque kind of presence, but then I almost take that back because he's not as, and it shouldn't be taken as like a praiseworthy thing. They're all monsters, but like Obama was very good at presenting himself as somebody who seemed like he cared, or you know what I mean? And right. Vance has a little bit of that, but at the same time, he's a little bit more, I don't even know what the right word would be for clumsy at it, I guess, but he is better than Trump. Let's put it that way, So I definitely worry where that goes. And I've already seen people on the Republican side of this are like almost already setting this up. Like the idea of, he's going to be better to plan for JD Vance. You're right. It's already being laid out and very well may have been the plan from the get-go. It's hard to say, but I definitely agree with you. I think that is a very obvious focal point. Now, I mean, I would argue, though, that I think that the warfare specifically in Gaza is much more interconnected with this agenda than most, with the whole plan for like maybe the first freedom city, Gaza, whatever they're talking about. But I do agree. I think that right now it's obvious. I just did a big show about this called the technocratic tiptoe, where I kind of laid a lot of this out in one long, one quick little 4-hour video where you can just, put it all together. But important to see, I think, that how all of this kind of comes together and is building out in front of us. But always a pleasure talking with you, brother. I look forward to the next one and breaking down, as always, I've got like 50 different things we could get into, but I like walking through these with you and kind of sharing our thoughts on it. I really do think it opens some, sometimes my eyes to some of these things that I wasn't thinking about. So thanks for joining me again, brother. I look forward to having me. Anything else you want to drop before we leave? Any upcoming events?
I would like for people to go to Activist Post and bookmark that and find, I've got a podcast section on there too, and we rotate in great interviews from people all over the world, and we've got great writers. It's just one-stop shop. Independent Media Alliance. You can go in there and search through that link, that tag. Anything that comes up, we'll pull anything that's been tagged with that. And so there's 18 of us in that group. So anything that they've written, you can find it all there. It's just there's a little bit for everybody. And of course, if you're checking it out on mobile, we did not build an app specifically because we did not want to centralize control into the hands of the app store. So you're going to be on your own to go to a browser and just pull it up, bookmark it, and do it that way. But please and thank you. As far as going to the site, Activist Post has been in business for 15 years. I take it seriously that they entrusted me to carry it the next step, and I think that we do a pretty good job over there of curating some information that this audience it's not for everybody. Let's be fair, but this audience, 100%. You'll like what we're doing at Activist Post.
I'd be willing to bet you it's more people than you think today. I really do. But please make sure you support an Activist Post. It's been going on a long time, and Charlie has taken the helm, and it's an important aspect of the independent media. There's a lot of good content in there, but the attack on all of this field is just constantly, it's ever present. Everyone is constantly being, it's all 2 steps forward, 1 step back in this field for people that are doing it the right way, in my opinion. So thanks for keeping that going, brother. And I'll leave it there for today. Looking forward to the next one. And as always, everybody out there, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
From the President's office in the White House in Washington, D.C., we present an address by the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
In holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.